Today we're going to talk about spring pasture management. We really want to focus on three different things. One, the use of plant growth hormones. Two, fertility. And then three, weed control.
Well, weed control, Brian, you say it's number 3, but I think it might be number 1 for a lot of pastures. When you think about getting good grass growth out in that pasture, if you've got weeds, they're very inefficient users of water, of sunlight, and of nutrients. So if you've got a pound of weeds out in your field, you've probably given up 3 pounds of grass, maybe even more depending on the type of weed that you've got. So we've got to get those tough weeds under control. The challenge here is we're often growing in a perennial grass situation, and if you've got something competing with the perennial, very likely it's a biennial or a perennial weed. It could be a certain type of thistle, it could be a variety of different weeds, and there are different choices that you can use to get them under control. Now if it's a long-term pasture, you can use some of the strongest options like Tordon or Milestone, or a product like Chaparral that has Milestone in combination with Ally.
Hey, let's be real specific here, okay? This is exactly what I want you to do. Number 1, keep it super simple. Okay, if all we're after is annual weeds, Distinct is my number 1 choice. If you want to run 2,4-D or dicamba, you certainly can. If thistle is your number 1 problem, you're going to go Milestone. If you say leafy spurge or maybe a few woody species along with leafy spurge, I'm going to go Tordon. And then finally, just some woody species, I'll look at Chaparral. Now Chaparral is a combination of Ally and Milestone.
Well, there are some grass weeds too, Brian, depending on what type of pasture. And here's where it gets a little complex because there are lots of different types of grasses that you have out there. So you may be looking at Pasture or something to take out some of these
Plateau.
Or Plateau, some of these tough grass weeds. Just have to make sure it's on the label to spray safely on the grasses you have in your pasture.
All right, let's change gears and talk about fertility a little bit. The number 1 thing I would tell you is grid or zone sample your pasture. And you might say, what? Grid or zone sample my pasture? I'm not even doing that out in my field. I don't care. This is the absolute right way to do soil fertility. We've got to find out what's happening out there. There's a lot of variability in so many of these pastures. And if you can just get that fertility right, there's no reason why if you follow all these steps when we go from weed control, fertility, plant growth hormones, there's no reason why you can't double your grass production. I'm dead serious. Double your grass production. What does that do for your dollars and cents on your farm? You got to start thinking about grass as your crop. And if you do everything possible to raise a great crop as grass, well, boy, that is a lot more income for your farm. So with fertility, yes, I realize nitrogen is going to be super important, and probably split applying nitrogen is going to be really important, just like we would in lawns. We tell you, hey, maybe even once every month or once every 2 months, you should be out there with some more nitrogen and sulfur. Beyond that, though, let's talk about the non-leachable things. Take a look at phosphorus, potassium, some of the micronutrients. These are all important things for great grass health.
And don't forget about soil pH. I think about just our crop fields and how much our yields have gone up over the last 10 years. And some people will say, well, we've got better hybrids, which we do. But look at fertility management and how we're looking at our yield maps and managing different areas out in our field to try to optimize production. The same thing can happen for you in your pastures.
Finally, let's talk about plant growth hormones a little bit. The real big one that I want you to consider is gibberellic acid. For example, there's a product called Rise Up Smart Grass. We've used it on our pastures. We've used it on our silage corn. It is phenomenal. Here's what we're after. We know that in corn or in grass like your pasture, any type of grass species, it's going to have some gibberellic acid it's going to naturally produce. What that does is it elongates the stem. You're going to have plenty of that when the weather's warm. When you don't have plenty of that is when the weather's cold. So what we want to do is trick the plant into thinking, hey, things are great. Let's elongate that stem. You absolutely will get more tonnage if you properly time a gibberellic acid application. What we're looking for is when the daytime temperature is in that 50 to 65 kind of range. So we're talking early in the spring, you make one application, only it's going to cost you probably $3 to $7, and do the same thing again in the fall. You're going to find you'll have a lot more grass.
Well, there certainly are a lot of things that you can do to improve production on your pasture ground. Hopefully we've given you some ideas today of things you can do like fertility, weed control, and certainly looking at plant growth hormones as well. Well, when we think about weeds to control out at pastures, our weed of the week might be one that you're facing. We'll show you what'll stop it coming up later in the show.